Was Alexander the Great really just history's version of Made in Greece? Let's unravel the papyrus scroll. Sure, he's often pictured as the Greek MVP, spreading souvlaki and philosophy like party favors. But Alexander wasn't born amid the marble columns of the Acropolis. He was from Pella, Macedonia's capital. Think of it like claiming a Scottish accent as very, very English. Macedonians weren't just Greeks with extra snow and a stronger tea habit. They had their own dialect, distinct customs, and a mullet game that would embarrass most rock stars. To the southern Greeks, Macedonians were like wild northern cousins. Not so much Plato, more let's party and conquer. Still, Alexander wasn't shy about flexing. He claimed descent from Heracles because nothing says noble roots like having a demigod as your great-great-great-granduncle. He even crashed the Olympic Games, a VIP event for proper Greeks, while locals debated whether he was Greek enough, the ancient equivalent of passport gatekeepers. If 356 BCE had ancestry DNA tests, even the family tree apps would send out a confused alert. This Greek heritage set the stage for his early feats, like taming the mighty horse Bucephalus as a toddler. Alexander's first pet wasn't some goldfish. It was a 400-pound warhorse with a serious attitude problem. Forget running with scissors. Imagine a toddler trying to tame that beast. Next on Alexander's toddler to-do list, juggling flaming swords during nap time. The legend usually says he tamed Bucephalus as a preteen, and frankly, playpens rarely come equipped for murderous stallions. Here's the real deal. Plutarch, ancient biographer and part-time mythbuster, tells us Alexander was about 12 when he amazed everyone by mounting the supposedly untamable Bucephalus. And Bucephalus wasn't your average pony. Think of him as the Maserati of Macedon, pricey, high maintenance, and prone to dramatic outbursts. While grown men threw in the towel, Alexander spotted the horse's real problem. It was terrified of its own shadow. Literally. Cool as a cucumber, he turned Bucephalus toward the sun and hopped on for an equestrian mic drop. Dad, a.k.a. Philip II, was so impressed he declared Macedonia already too small for his son. Don't worry, no small children were traumatized or heroically trampled in this story. As history gallops on, remember, never let a good horse tail outrun the facts. Behind on your childhood milestones? Relax. Alexander, you've got time. His early connection with Bucephalus symbolized the courage that would help him never lose a battle. Think you've never lost an argument? Alexander the Great is here to humble you. His battle record is so flawless, even his laundry could take notes on spotless. Legend crowns him the undefeated champion of the ancient world's battle royale. No cheesy elimination rounds required. Here's the Alexander never lost a straight-up head-to-head pitched battle. Not once. From Greece to India, he blitzed enemy armies like he was mainlining energy drinks while speedrunning a game with every cheat code unlocked. Battle of Granicus? W. Issus? Wa'agan? Gaugamela? Sorry, Darius. Better luck next time. But this wasn't dumb luck. His tactical moves had opposing generals sweating bullets, or, sarissas, long before dawn. He racked up mop-up victories that left ancient bookies clutching their stomachs. Sure, he barely escaped death at the Malian city. Proving invincible doesn't mean invulnerable. Still, when his wins came with steep costs, even Alexander probably paused, wondering if the spoils were worth the world's priciest receipt. Let's be real. In the ancient job market, his conquest endorsements would make the Iliad look like a tweet. Despite his undefeated record, some believe his life ended prematurely due to poison. If you've ever suspected history was penned by people with a flair for the dramatic, the death of Socrates is Exhibit A. Philosopher meets poison. Film at 11. According to popular legend, one sip of hemlock sent Socrates offstage left, collapsing on cue like a soap opera extra. But here's the kicker. Hemlock poisoning isn't a one-sip-and-done affair. It's less shot of tequila and more slow-motion sleep paralysis monster. Ancient Athens wouldn't have handed him an Oscar for special effects. Real hemlock kills by gradually paralyzing your muscles until even breathing turns into hard labor. Think death by slow Wi-Fi freeze rather than a tragic Shakespearean curtain call. Plato, history's ultimate hype man, gave us the polished version in Phaedo, where Socrates faces death like a calm philosopher king, conveniently skipping the messy bits. The Greeks called hemlock executions humane, but only because no blood was spilled. No gladiator poison pits, sorry. And hey, exile was on the table. Socrates took one look at the RSVP, checked yes for poison, and history cast him as the willing sage. Ancient Athens on WebMD might have read, "You have paralysis and difficulty breathing. You may be dead." Before his untimely death, he famously solved the puzzle of the Gordian knot with a decisive sword strike. Imagine wandering into a city, stumbling upon a legendary, fiendishly tangled knot, and solving the unsolvable by channeling your inner lumberjack. Enter Alexander the Great in Gordium, where legend promises, "Untangle this knot, and Asia's yours." No pressure, right? Alexander sizes up the mess, looking like it was tied by a hyperactive cat with a vendetta against order, far more perplexing than a pair of earbuds after a gym session. Instead of wrestling with the chaos, Alexander draws his sword and slices right through it, redefining outside-the-box thinking as outright outside-the-knot swiping. The locals gasp. Someone, somewhere is definitely muttering, "That's not what the prophecy meant!" But hey, nobody read the fine print about a no swords policy. With this bold move, Alexander sends a clear message. Neither rope nor rules can hold him down. Thus, cutting the Gordian knot is born, inspiring every impatient puzzle solver ever since. Spoiler alert, Alexander will carry that same "why negotiate when you can just conquer" vibe through all his future escapades. This boldness contrasts with the notion that he only visited the oracle at Delphi once. Some folks dial psychic hotlines. Socrates? He made a beeline for the oracle. These days, you can almost picture him making weekly pilgrimages to Delphi, treating it like ancient Greece's Starbucks, ordering a wisdom venti and a prophecy macchiato. But here's the kicker. Socrates only showed up once. One solitary visit sparked the legendary claim that no one is wiser than Socrates. If Delphi had punch cards, Socrates wouldn't have even scored a free prophecy that day. The oracle was no subscription plan, and he definitely wasn't popping in for horoscope updates. Yet gossip in Athens had it that he practically camped out in the temple lobby, always angling for a wisdom refill. The real Socrates? He preferred holding court in the bustling agora over lurking in sacred chambers. He swapped cryptic fumes for spirited debates, coffee shop chatter over oxygen-starved riddles. So that one whirlwind trip to Delphi? It became the origin story of philosophy's quirkiest career, an ancient gossip tornado with uncanny staying power. Regardless of his visits to oracles, he is famed for conquering the entire known world. Who really ran the world? Spoiler alert, it wasn't Genghis Khan. Legend has him plastering "Property of Mongolia" stickers across half the planet and setting the rest ablaze. According to the gossip mill, the Khan crushed, annexed, or at least shot a menacing side-eye at every civilization from Paris to Polynesia. But let's crack open those Mongol travel logs. Turns out they kept receipts for everything. They looted. The facts? Genghis and his heirs did sweep through much of Asia. Check. They sampled Eastern Europe like finicky diners at a medieval buffet. All right, fair. But South America? Not a single Mongol postcard. Australia and the Americas? Not even a yurt stakeout. Antarctica's penguins? Still free. Probably because even the Mongols knew when to quit. Meanwhile, Europe and India got only patchy Mongol renovations, and China's conquest took decades, not a slam dunk. World domination? Napoleon tried. Hitler dreamed. But Genghis gets the unfair blame for conquering places he never even RSVP'd to. Now, saddle up and let's ride east to see what really went down in Peking. While his vast empire is well attested, popular culture amusingly imagines him with a British accent. Picture Cleopatra sipping tea and saying, "Blimey, Julius, that's one dodgy asp you've got there." If you've ever watched a movie about Egypt's last pharaoh, chances are she sounds less like Nile royalty and more like she's crashed a Downton Abbey tea party. Hollywood seems convinced that true regal vibes demand a posh London accent, preferably one so snooty it could lull Buckingham Palace's corgis to sleep. This myth probably hatched from British stars donning Cleopatra's headdress, or from Liz Taylor's Cleopatra, who, though American, was surrounded by more Brits than a royal wedding. In reality, not a single ancient historian left us a Yelp review of Cleopatra's voice. Spoiler alert, she almost certainly didn't sound like she was ordering scones at Herod's. Cleopatra was Macedonian Greek by blood, the first of her dynasty to bother learning Egyptian. Respect. Her polyglot court was a dazzling jumble of Greek, Egyptian, and whatever dialects her power plays dragged in. Yet modern filmmakers persist. Nothing screams pharaoh like a queen who could outsnob your entire tea club. "Mind the gap between your empire and my throne," you can almost hear her say, with a perfectly clipped accent. However, beyond cinematic portrayals, some see him as merely a ruthless warlord. Picture Genghis Khan, not just some garden-variety barbarian having a really bad day. Legend paints him as the original mad axeman, blazing from town to town with zero table manners and even worse, sword etiquette. Hollywood and your high school history book agree. He was the poster child for ruthless warlords, all pillage and no pause. Like Attila the Hun, but with hair that actually got compliments. But let's hit pause on that rampage replay. The real Genghis was less lunatic with a lance and more CEO of a very aggressive startup. Sure, his conquests redrew the map like a kid with crayons, but he championed loyalty, installed meritocracy, and even crafted a legal code to unify squabbling tribes. His business cards? Conqueror, innovator, occasional invader. Sure, Khan's tactics were brutal, but hey, medieval times weren't exactly a spa day. By uniting the Mongols and kickstarting the Silk Road's express lane, he did more team building than you'd expect from history's ultimate bogeyman. Yet, despite the violence, he is credited with uniting his empire in remarkable harmony. Imagine an entire continent belting out Kumbaya. Genghis Khan might have tried it, but swapped the campfire guitars for galloping horsemen and the marshmallows for sword-wielding incentives. Sure, the Mongol Empire stretched like a bad sunburn from the Pacific to the Caspian, but keeping that epic sprawl intact took more than a throat-shredding war cry. Genghis stunned the 13th century with a merit-based promotion system. Think Mongol Idol, where your skill earned your saddle, not royal birthright. Yasa, their strict law code, covered everything from horse healthcare to theft, because priorities. And unlike your typical conqueror, Genghis let locals keep their gods and customs, not out of Kumbaya vibes, but because fewer holy wars meant fewer headaches. And less Advil. Under his Pax Mongolica, trade boomed, with postal relays thundering across the steppe like medieval FedEx. No lost packages, just extra horseshoes. Just don't mistake that unity for group hugs. Those who sang off-key quickly learned the percussive Mongol definition of harmony. Think hacky sack, Mongol style, and yes, it was lethal. His unity and vision were matched by his famed courage, being said to be afraid of nothing. Ever notice how some folks stroll through haunted houses and horror flicks without so much as a shiver? They claim to be born fearless, as if they emerged from the womb, scoffing at clowns and ignoring electricity bills. Myth alert. Genuine, rock-solid fearlessness is about as real as calorie-free cheesecake. Science tells us we all have amygdala, the brain's bouncers, always on guard for threats, whether it's a saber-toothed tiger or your mother-in-law's new perfume. So what about those swaggering tough guys? Odds are, they're just masking jitters with bravado and badly timed jokes. Emotional cosplay at its finest. True fearlessness, when it shows up, usually thanks to a malfunctioning amygdala, isn't exactly glamorous. It often ends with someone petting a lion, thinking it's a giant house cat. If you genuinely feared nothing, you'd either be wearing a cape or starring in a cautionary meme. The takeaway? Facing your fears isn't a flaw, it's survival smarts. Even Batman probably keeps his therapist on speed dial. After his death, intriguing tales emerged such as Ptolemy stealing his body and vanishing. Who knew kidnapping could be a royal spectacle? One minute, Alexander the Great lies in Babylon, freshly deceased and waiting for a stately ride home. The next, his corpse is breaking headlines. Legend has it his loyal generals planned the world's most lavish funeral parade, a road trip all the way to Macedonia, featuring state-of-the-art chariots, gilded everything, and enough mourners to cause ancient traffic jams. But history loves a twist. Enter Ptolemy, Alexander's old buddy and Egypt's soon-to-be pharaoh, who treats corpse-napping like a friendly prank gone epic. He pulls off the ancient equivalent of a grand theft hearse, hijacking the funeral procession and joyriding Alexander's remains south. Arrived at wrong Ptolemy, the ancient GPS surely quipped. Why? Because clutching Alexander's body wasn't morbid memorabilia. It was a giant billboard screaming, "My empire! My rules!" Rumors blossomed as the body vanished in Egypt. Macedonia was left holding an empty coffin, while Ptolemy showed the world you really can steal the show. And the body. Turns out, finders keepers is a rule that dates back at least 2,300 years. Despite his larger-than-life stories, some believe Alexander was actually quite short. Picture Alexander the Great fumbling for a step stool just to shout orders at his troops. The popular image shrinks him to a hoplite's knee, barely peeking over his own shield, the world's first general to win battles thanks to a mix of intimidation and hilarious mismeasurement. But this myth wasn't born from Alexander's genes. It sprang from a comedic mix-up between ancient and modern units of measure. While playground gossip paints him as the world's shortest conqueror, ancient sources peg him at a solid 5 feet 6 inches, basically NBA draft material in Macedonian terms. Yet who needs accuracy when you have a good punchline? Medieval storytellers, with fact-checking skills comparable to leaky aqueducts, kept shrinking him for dramatic flair. Plutarch, however, was no slouch. He described Alexander as attractive and commanding, not someone you'd mistake for a bargain bin footstool. And let's face it, for a supposed shorty, Alexander certainly covered a lot of ground, usually at the front of an army, never ducking behind a table. His physical stature contrasts with controversial legends like burning the Library of Alexandria. Blaming Julius Caesar for torching the Library of Alexandria is history's hottest tabloid rumor. If only Julius had stocked a fire extinguisher instead of a laurel wreath. Picture this: Caesar strutting into Alexandria amid a Civil War cocktail of flaming ships and flaring egos, and suddenly, the ancient world's ultimate book club goes up in smoke. Legend has it Caesar accidentally incinerated history's coolest hardcover collection, classic Oops Global Edition. But here's where the papyrus peels away. The record is squishier than an overripe grape. Did some scrolls get crispy in the chaos? Possibly. Did the entire encyclopedic marvel burn to a cinder? Highly doubtful. Caesar was just one player in a centuries-long game of who wants to be the library's arsonist. The place had been deteriorating for ages, victim to budget cuts, neglect, and maybe even paper cuts deadlier than Roman swords. In truth, there's no smoking gun, just historians sparring over ashes. The real tragedy? Those precious scrolls vanished mostly thanks to bureaucracy, not bonfires. Caesar's confirmed casualty? Probably his dinner, not Aristotle's greatest hits. On a personal note, he is also remembered for marrying passionately, driven by love. Think folks in olden times were all hopeless romantics, getting hitched by candlelight while reciting poetry. Time for a reality check. The idea that historical marriages were epic love stories is about as accurate as calling medieval hygiene a spa day. In truth, tying the knot was less about moonlit sonnets and more about merging sheep, land, and occasionally warring families. Marriages were business deals or strategic alliances. A slow-motion corporate merger, but with more awkward family dinners and fewer PowerPoints. If you actually loved the person you married, congrats. You just won life's emotional lottery. But honestly, betting the farm on love was a long shot. Families prioritized dowries, property, and social standing over butterflies and passionate love letters. If your biggest asset was a sparkling wit, you'd have done better on Tinder than at a medieval matchmaking meet and greet. Sure, exceptions existed. Some folks found true love, just like some found hidden treasure or survived the plague. But nobody was counting on it. If romance was the prize, history wasn't handing out Disney endings, unless you liked yours with a side of poisoned apples. Still, debates continue about whether he left a lasting legacy after his death. When he died, the world barely flinched. His obituary could have fit on a sticky note and still left room for a grocery list. Outside a handful of folks who remembered his impeccable posture at the yearly potluck, his passing caused about as much stir as a dropped paperclip. No statues, no wreath-laden monuments, not even a hastily made hashtag mourned his exit. If the measure of greatness is having a school or sandwich named after you, he set the new low bar. His name hasn't graced so much as a back alley or a deli special. Sure, history is full of unsung heroes, but in his case, even historians forgot to hum. While most legacies leave behind echoes, his didn't even whisper. Google draws a blank and asks Siri about his impact, and she politely asks for a definition. Let's face it, more people remember the inventor of sliced bread. Yet in life's grand sandwich, even the unheralded end up as crumbs. reminding us that even a life uncelebrated is, well, a life lived.